Well, it sounds like Rick doesn't have the song this morning.
I don't think he doesn't have the song. I think he doesn't want a song.
That means he leaves it up to me and my discretion.
That's totally true. It falls onto you.
So
man.
I'll keep it short and sweet, but since we're talking about plumbing, singing in the rain, we're singing in the rain.
That works for us.
What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again.
All right, Carlito, we've got another podcast here.
I'm so excited.
We've got Rick. We got Rick Clark from Rick's Mechanical. Rick is a self-employed master plumber and also an authorized service rep for Kohler Products. He's an ACR. So, Rick, tell us a little bit about being an ACR and tell us a lot about plumbing.
Yes, authorized service representative.
So you know a lot about plumbing and Kohler, about plumbing and Kohler.
I've been doing it since I got out of high school. So
Oh, wow. Okay, so you are a few years older than us.
I would think.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Rick Clark, as you mentioned, and I started in the plumbing trade right out of high school. As soon as I got my ticket, I started my own company and went on to get my gas license and refrigeration license, and so I could compete with the locals. I got injured on a job and ended up having some operations on my shoulders and moved to Toronto. Didn't think I was going to be working again after that. Got too tired of sitting around and doing nothing.
You got started right out of high school?
Yeah, that's correct.
Teenager, 18?
18 years old, yes, that's right.
And so right now, how old are you now?
63.
So you've got a few years of experience here.
Yeah.
You've got like 4 decades of experience plus, right?
It seems like it.
Yeah, no. So we've got a lot of questions to ask about plumbing. So you got the gas ticket. I know that you mentioned the other day that you have a lot of certifications.
Well, backflow prevention is one of the ones that falls under the plumbing. And then ODP certification under the refrigeration license. Those things that you have to compete.
I always thought that was HVAC, but that's also plumbing.
The thing about it is that whether a plumber likes it or not, he's going to get involved with natural gas at some point in his life. As soon as he touches a water heater, wall-hung boiler for domestic hot water.
What is generally the rule here? I mean, do HVAC guys cross the line with plumbing guys and vice versa, or do they work together?
Generally work together, and most HVAC companies will have a plumber, or most plumbing companies have an HVAC tech. You need it, or you rule yourself out of doing some work.
Let's get a little brief history about Kohler, because I know Kohler's been around for a while.
145 years.
Wow. Still privately held.
That's
Still privately
impressive.
held, yeah.
I mean, it is Wisconsin, so there is a lot of cheese. I had my fair share of cheese while I was down there. But yeah, I was impressed with the accommodations, the golf course. It's just like a little mini.
2 PGA golf courses.
2 PGA golf.
Wow.
Yeah, one on the lake and one inland.
Yeah, it is quite the facility to tour and check out. And then we got to see the toilets being made. We got to see briefly the cast iron stuff, a lot of the shower stuff. So it was very impressive.
They were involved in farm implements as well, making castings.
So I want to go back 40 plus years. How has plumbing changed from then to now?
A lot of improvements in backflow. There's been a lot of improvements in lead levels in the brass. It's big today. Some of the other things that we could all remember are maybe toilets that would take 4 gallons or 3 gallons.
I
to
remember
flush.
those.
And now we're talking a fraction of a gallon.
What's the standard now? The standard is 1.6
Well, there's 1.28 and 1.6
is the standard now. But then we're also getting as low as 1.
liters. Yes,
Yeah,
liters
yeah.
per flush.
So I take it Kohler was an American company?
Yes.
Is.
Is yeah, Wisconsin Kohler, right? So is it the
Kohler, Wisconsin.
Kohler, Wisconsin, the town of city
Wow.
of Kohler.
They hired everyone, so they just renamed the town, I guess.
Interesting.
Do they do
I
that
like
in Croatia?
They do probably.
Carlito's Croatian, so occasionally we'll throw in a Croatian or Portuguese joke. But okay, so plumbing's changed dramatically in 40 years. See a lot of kids that did get into the trades in the 70s and the 80s, and then I guess they started to fall off the trades in the 90s and 2000s.
It's sad to see young people today don't value or see the value in getting a trade. Believe me, if you're not going to be amazing at trading stocks and bonds, you should get into the trades. Pays well. You got a job for life. If you don't like where you're working, you can always start your own company. You have to work for someone else, always. Rethink your strategy if you're not thinking trades, honestly. I know that a lot of the new arrivals to Canada from other countries are big on the trades. unfortunately, I feel like the kids that are here today are going to miss out.
They don't really want it. I have noticed that same thing as well, where I've seen a lot of Irish guys come over, English guys come over, Australians come over, and they're getting right into the trades, and they're actually good. They're really, really good. They're hungry for the knowledge. They're hungry to build a business, to build a partnership, work with other hungry guys as well.
Yeah, I don't know what it is that's turned the kids off against
That's
trades.
a whole other talk, I
Yeah,
guess.
definitely. It's hard work out there.
I think you need a video game that is actually you putting plumbing together, and maybe the kids will learn.
That's
it, huh?
brilliant.
It's a good idea. It is
you
a
go.
good idea. I think the kids
Cut
just
me in.
need. I think the kids just need to see how satisfying it is to actually build something for a day, a week, a month, a year, and build a business and build a home or renovate a bathroom or whatever. I think they need to see that satisfaction.
And the pride. The pride.
Huge amount.
You know, and it's important to be proud of what you do.
In Canada, speaking, lots of the trade schools have kind of disappeared. We don't have that many left that are actually formally training everybody.
Unless you're in the union. The union has their own training situation for high rise. High rise is totally different than domestic plumbing, just a whole new game. And you got to know what you're doing. And if you don't, then you'll end up with situations with pressure imbalance and then valves like this that won't work right because they're pressure balanced valves. That's the biggest drawback, or I shouldn't say drawback, but one of the things you have to keep track of in a high-rise building is maintaining water pressures that are balanced.
How do they do that? How is it? Because I don't know that much on the commercial side, and how do they mechanically set up things for those units?
In most cases, the water will come in the basement of the high-rise. Then there's be a booster pump that'll pump it up so many floors. And then on that floor that's determined, which is 18 or 20 floors up, there'll be another booster pump. And that can take it up to 60, 70 floors up. But every so many floors, you have a pressure zone. You have to work within that pressure zone. Otherwise, things get drastically out of whack and pipes will burst.
I believe it's every 7 floors, right?
That's what I've always
Yeah.
seen. Like now, when you get into 8 floors, it's a little trickier because the top floors got low water pressure or the bottom floors got excessive water pressure. Excessive water pressure leads to waste of water. If you run a tap at 80 psi and 40 psi, you'd think that half the amount of water would come out at 40. If you're leaking water at 80, you're leaking a lot more water. And those are things that need to be maintained. It's one of those things that needs to probably be rebuilt every 3 to 4 years. The booster pump pressure reducing zone valves.
And that's something probably people don't even pay attention to because maintenance covers that. And
You need to pay attention to it because when it fails, if you're at 300 pounds on your low side or on your high side and 50 on the low side, that diaphragm fails, the valve fails, you're instantly popping toilets and water lines and anything that's iffy.
so much pressure, right?
Yeah.
What is the ideal pressure that we're looking at when it comes to those condo units, commercial versus when it comes to residential?
Anywhere from 50 to 70 is good.
That's what you're looking for.
Those are good pressures.
Do you want to stay away from being higher?
Like I said before, if your water pressure is too high, you have a potential to leak a lot more water and do more damage and things like that. There's one building in town that I've been involved with that's had many leaks since it was built. And some of it was pressure imbalance, bad solder joints. And
And then on the residential side, if we start getting into there, I mean, I know that the older homes, I guess all the way up until the 80s, would have all been copper by that time, and then PEC started making the transition.
we sometimes see PECs where people renovated their house, the plumber come in, removed all the copper, replaced it all with PECs. Then they go in the shower and they go, wow, this is like a fraction of the water pressure volume that we would have got from the old shower valve. The old shower valve was hooked up to copper. Let's face it, if you have a clear half-inch inside diameter, all of your copper fittings go on the outside of the pipe. With PECs, everything goes on the inside. And if you have 5 of those fittings in a row, you have 5 restrictions in a row before you get to your faucet.
So that won't build up any pressure being smaller diameter.
It'll build up a pressure. The pressure drops off severely when you open the faucet and the volume drops.
So that's the reason why, because I've never been a fan of the PEX and the interior fittings versus the exterior fittings of copper, where you do restrict. There is a restriction when it comes to it.
At every fitting.
It's not a valve issue. It's not a shower head fixture. It's not that issue. It's the actual supply.
And it's hard to get the customer to understand that. Most of them don't want to hear it. That's because the plumber that did the job told them that's not the way it is. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that be upfront. That's all. Just let your customer know that you could have reduced flow.
Do you get a little nervous when you start trying to explain this to a lot of customers and then all of a sudden it's kind of a deer in the headlight and it just glazes over? It's like, this is too much technical.
They don't want to hear it.
I just thought you were just a plumber. You know what I mean? But they don't really want to hear it. That's the issue.
They don't want to hear that there's a problem that you can't fix. A lot of our shower heads have a 2 gallon a minute limit. The old shower heads didn't. And you used to be able to go in and pull restrictors out. You're not supposed to do that today for backflow.
I've seen
But
a lot
you
of
could
people do
before.
that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, you could, but I mean, now you're into a backflow prevention situation. Say if your bathtub was plugged, the drain was plugged, and your hand shower doesn't shut off. So you just leave it hanging down and it gets immersed in the water. The building needs to be drained, or a fire truck comes along and starts sucking water out of the main, and it'll draw that shower water up through that hose and into the drinking water.
Really?
Now you've got a cross connection. And that's why we're not allowed to take those check valves out.
Wait a second.
That I did
Are you
not
saying
know.
cross-contamination then? Is that what
That's
that
right.
is?
That's correct.
By removing those restrictors.
If you remove the check valve is the main restriction inside of it.
That's very interesting.
That I didn't know.
And then you get into a whole new ballgame where I've had customers ask me to do it, and I can't do it. That puts me on the line for it. And I'm not going to do that. And you don't want to have to hyperchlorinate an apartment building. You don't want to do that.
Oh my God, we're talking about a complete shutdown and clean.
Yeah.
I've never ever actually heard that. That's amazing.
Yeah, that can happen, and it happens a lot. And that's what you find when you take the backflow prevention course. They'll fill you in on all the scenarios.
And this course, it could be taken how often, or is it done through the
You
union?
have to redo it every 5 years.
Every 5 years, got to update.
And your equipment needs to be recertified every year. Kohler, I don't know if you know it or not, but they're famous worldwide for their generators. They have generators that can do small jobs and whole high-rise buildings, and hospitals and whatnot.
That I didn't even know.
I didn't even know that either.
And so their work with blocks and engine blocks and whatnot would have taken them there. And then they also used to build small engine blocks for lawnmowers. They had their own Kohler lawnmower.
I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah.
I've seen them on Lawn Boys, I think.
Well, I have a lawn boy and it's on there.
Even, I believe they had a lawnmower that was called Kohler. They have it hanging up in their museum.
So this is a pretty diverse company.
Yes,
I thought we were going to get more into toilets and bathtubs and drain pans.
They do it all.
They do everything.
Yeah. From what I've noticed anyways.
So they originally started with generators? Is that how this business started?
I can't say it was generators because I'm thinking it was far before generators and farm equipment.
It was farm equipment, yeah.
Some of the hay rakes that you see that would have been horse-drawn were cast by them.
Wow. Some great history.
I think I remember when I was a kid that they had cast iron toilet tanks that hung on the wall.
Oh, wow.
And then there was a 2-inch pipe that would come down the wall, turn and twirl.
I
and go into
remember,
the back of the toilet.
you know, anybody who's seen the movie Godfather, I remember that, right? So it's
Hang on. I have to add in, I live in a 140-year-old home. And we have one of those in the basement
No,
still. Yeah,
really?
you pull the cord, steel wire, and you pull it, and it flushes. Gravity feed.
It's gravity. It's
Yeah.
just gravity. That's how it
And
works.
the actual pipe was very large.
It was 2-inch.
Yeah, so we have one in the basement. We just flush in.
I want to dive right into plumbing, all kinds of plumbing, and I want to ask you, Rick, ideal situation if you were plumbing your house, how would you tackle that? How would you do it with today's technology and today's products that we have out there? How would you handle it?
Definitely be working with copper. And
Puts a smile on my face because I would be doing the same.
because I learned how to weld, and that's why not use that talent. Once you've done enough solder joints, you can take them apart and see how well you're doing. That's always a great idea.
Why don't you run us through, if you can, the proper way to do a joint?
Well, the very first thing you want to do is make sure your pipe's clean. It doesn't have anything stuck inside it that's going to show up later on when you turn the water on. And then take the outside of the pipe, clean it with some sandcloth, Take a fitting brush, and that's a wire brush that's round. Clean your fitting very well, flux both surfaces, and then apply the heat. And don't overheat it. I like to keep the solder on the joint until it starts to flow. And then I know I'm in the zone. And then you can add and subtract heat as you need. Then you don't end up with these messes where the solder is dripped all over the floor.
Honeycomb.
And some of it's gone down inside the pipe and piled up and will eventually end up as little balls of solder in your screens and things like that.
Wow, I
will.
never even thought of that.
Yeah, it will. So you're going to run copper. The city's brought it into the supply line. So you've got your meter, and then you're branching off in copper. Are you taking 3/4 copper and going to the showers?
If in fact that's a 3/4 valve, yes. It's a 1/2-inch valve, you don't need to. The problem with running too large of a pipe to a small shower valve, it takes longer to get room temperature water to go away. So you have to dump more water down the drain until you get the temperature you're looking for.
Because you bottleneck the water from getting to the valve?
Well, you just supplied a pipe that big to supply that demand. And so all that water goes to room temperature when you're not using it. And then when you want to use it, if you're using the pre-purge system on DTV, it has to run longer until it hits that desired temperature.
Pre-purge, I don't know this one. On the DTV, or that's not on the prompt, or is that just on the DTV?
Just the DTV.
And that just like you hit a button and it'll purge all the room temp water in it?
It'll purge every head that you picked.
I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, it's right on the embedded web page that you have to access through.
I think it's something many didn't read.
I didn't read that part because I've only done one DTV system and I was really happy with it. I've done a lot of prompt systems because I'm very happy with that.
They're nice.
Yeah, they're just simple. I think that they're simple. I mean, the manifold.
You can always have two remotes, so you can, if you want to prime the pipes with hot water, then you can stand outside the shower and hit the head you want, and it'll come on and it'll run, and the temperature, it'll stop flashing when it hits the temperature you're looking for.
Beautiful. I love technology.
No, it's just the technology. That's it. Okay. So now you're running. If you've got a shower valve that's 3/4, and I still prefer the 3/4 valves. I just like that in a shower. I like that volume of water, and then you're still running 1/2-inch to the toilet, 1/2-inch to the sinks, and
you'll be running 1/2-inch to each head.
Yes.
From your 3/4. Whole idea of a 3/4 valve is so that you can have as many heads as you want at 2 gallons a minute. But if you put too many heads in and you don't increase the drain, you won't get rid of the water before it starts to overflow, and you'll have water around your ankles.
What is the rule of thumb when you're doing that? Because I know that I spoke to an inspector one time. So it depends on the amount of volume of water that's actually coming out of the shower. It determines the size of the drain that you require, right?
Regular shower drain should be 2-inch.
A 2-inch shower drain.
Yeah. And then when you get to 4 heads or 6 heads, put in a second 2-inch drain.
So I have 2 drains. I thought some people were saying step it up to a 3-inch, but when you get into residential, it's hard to fit a 3-inch P-trap in a 2x10 or 2x. Most residentials won't have 2x12 joists.
I would just go to 2-inch drains.
2-inch drains, right? Oh, that's good. I did a shower with 4.
Did you?
Yeah, of course I
Now,
did.
but they weren't interconnected with each other. They were
Gang trapped.
gang traps. So what's the terminology behind that?
Basically, you take 3 of them and you bring it into one. So it's similar to doing a commercial shower setup, a gym or something like that.
Yeah.
That not every shower has its own individual P-trap
Or in around a pool area.
or pool.
So you wouldn't need to have three tee-offs on the main stack.
No, what you would do is you'd run those all into the one drain. Go into the one trap or whatever. Or
And then just keep venting those.
Yeah, and if you're going to have 4 2s, then I would have probably put those into a 3. And
Yeah.
Very interesting.
It eventually gets to the 3 and then you start running off and then you'll never have any backup, right?
Now, I've seen large showers. People build these massive showers, but they never use them completely. Now, does that mean one of those drains may be dry?
No, not necessarily, because the whole floor would slope to the drain. So if you're getting some water, it's going to go down. And you'll know if you've got a dry trap. It'll smell. When the wind's in the right direction outside, if it's blowing one way, sometimes it blows up through the empty trap. And then if it's going the other way, sometimes it just sucks the nice heated air out of your house and puts it right down the sewer pipe.
So since we're into showers, let's talk about some of Kohler's valves.
Well, you can't see this. But anyways.
But that's the new right temp valve, right?
This is the right temp valve. It comes with shutoffs. It comes with threaded sweat. This is thread and sweat. It comes with PEX and Worsbro, I believe. These are your check stops. So you wanted to pull this out you can actually turn the water off at these. You don't have to shut the whole bathroom down.
So it has two valves on it without having to shut the water off to the bathroom.
That's correct.
It's brilliant.
I know.
Now, if you want, because these can be taken out and cleaned, they also have check valves in them so that the flow can't go both ways for unbalanced pressure system.
Because this is a pressure balance valve.
This is a pressure balance valve. So there's also a diaphragm in here that keeps the hot and cold flowing back each way. You also have your check valves in here and strainers to catch the dirt, because once the dirt gets into this valve, that's a problem.
Kohler designed this valve because it's very modular, right? I mean, you could basically use it. Any plumber could use it in almost any application. They designed it that way so then the plumbers can come in or the homeowners can come in and pick and choose what they wanted to tackle or how they wanted to tackle it, right?
Right. And with this valve, you can bolt them back to back, and then you don't have to worry about getting the hot and the cold on the right side, because if you get them reversed, you just reverse the cartridge.
Oh my
Oh, wow.
God.
Really?
Yeah.
I love it.
And inside of here is a flow restrictor, which would be going to the shower head, so that if your toe tester has any restriction on it at all, or if the volume's too much, that keeps the water from going up and coming out the shower head until you hit the diverter. So if you need to reverse this, you simply put a screwdriver through, pop that out, and shove it in the other end.
Wow. Instead of having to redo the whole thing.
That's right.
Wow.
So this is made for convenience.
Is this something typical of Kohler?
Kohler never goes backwards on anything they build. They're always looking for a way better way. Parts to do the job of our old 304 valve are about 50% higher than just this cartridge. It was two parts. It didn't always have the shutoffs, and the shutoffs weren't always easy to get at, because a lot of times the tile guy will close that hole down so much you can't get a screwdriver.
That'll
to shut
never
it off.
happen. What are you talking about, Rick? Tile guys don't do that.
I think they throw that plastic piece away and they just say, forget it.
I'm going to make my cut the way I want to make my cut.
Yeah, I remember there was a couple shower heads. I would take a flathead screwdriver and I'd close them down, and then until I finished my work.
That's exactly what that is.
But this is just easy hand tighten, loosen.
Well, actually, no. You use a screwdriver as well
Okay.
to turn it. They use a silicone grease or lubricant that is pretty tacky, and so you do need a tool to turn it. I thought I could pop them out, but I can't.
You bring up a good point about having them back to back if you're doing a double wall assembly, right? So a lot of homes are built
Yeah, I
where
love it.
the wet walls are on both sides. I'm going to ask you a question that I think I know the answer. What would you prefer, any wet walls in a bathroom? Would you prefer to be 2x4 or 2x6?
Yeah, 2x6.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
If you take a 3-inch ABS fitting, it's already as thick as a 2x4. And then you got a 1/4 of an inch of fitting on either side. So now you're either going to have a bulge in that wall, and if it's a long wall, you're going to notice it, or you're just going to have, every time the hot water goes in, the pipe expands because it's ABS, it expands a lot. You're going to hear that creak, creak, creak. And
I didn't realize that.
It does, right? It
ABS
does move.
has a high expansion coefficient.
So as soon as the shower hot water draws off from the shower and it gets into the 3-inch pipe, you start getting that expansion. If it's in a tight wall cavity, you are going to hear that creaking kind of sound.
You're going to hear it, and I have probably 10% of my complaints are just that. I can hear this thing clicking or ticking or whatever, and it's got nothing to do with us. I mean, we supply the equipment. We don't install it. People do need to be careful that they're not setting up situations that are going to be a real problem down the road.
So if we want to set up an ideal, because I agree with you, I definitely prefer 2x6. In my opinion, I think it actually is smarter to just make the whole bathroom all 2x6. Just frame it that way, because then you can also create niches in the shower. You can have better wet walls when it comes to it. You can have more freedom. Plumbers can actually drill the hole right smack in the middle instead of out to the side and then worry about that. How do you like drilling all your setup? How do you like getting all your lines all ready to go for your fittings and everything like that? Do you leave a little bit of space on that, or do you strap them down?
Where it's important to be strapped, I strap it and strap it tight. And then where you want it to be able to move without creating this noise, you put a little insulation in behind it or something that
Silicone.
takes that. Whatever that can take away that gritty
friction.
The friction. And once you've got that done, one of the other things that's important to know and to remember is, if you're going to bring a 3-inch line down through a 2x6 exterior wall or anything like an interior wall, when you flush that toilet, you're going to hear that water come down that
Yeah.
pipe. And if you're in the kitchen
Soundproof
and that's
it.
what you're hearing, I recommend either use cast iron for
Yeah.
the vertical section, or pipe insulation. The green rock wool is pretty good at sound deadening, but you're still only going to end up with an inch on either side.
If you're working
It's-
2x6, I
But
know.
it is so true. The old cast is so much more quiet than the ABS.
Almost all of the high-end homes I go in today are using cast iron drops.
Stacks.
Yeah, stacks
Wow.
and drops. And
What are you guys doing for steam showers?
Kohler has their own steam unit now. It's amazing. One of the biggest issues that we can find with it is the water. If the water isn't softened, it can be very, you get the calcium buildup, and pretty soon it slows the flow of water down into what I would call similar to a combustion chamber, where it's converted from steam or water to steam.
This is very interesting. So anyone that has a steam bath should have a water softener.
It's better if you do. In any event, I have many out there that don't. And every so many years, you have to take the float off and bore that hole out so that the flow can go. Because if you've got an element that can vaporize a gallon of water in 10 seconds, you need a good supply of water. Or pretty soon that water level will drop in there. The element will come out of the water, which is hard on it. And so then they have to, it'll shut itself down automatically and give you an error code. 90% of it is just cleaning that calcium out and getting it back up and running.
That's a problem with a lot of fixtures. You know, you'll get a lot of clients asking, why is my spout not, we all know this. I guess the easiest way to explain it to clients are rain heads. Any shower rain heads, when they start to whistle and make those sounds, they start realizing that there's calcium buildup going on. Are we fair to say that Canada is notorious for a lot of calcium inside our waters?
Well, down in Windsor area, the water's not so hard.
It's not, eh?
Not as hard as it is in Lake Ontario. 3 spots that stick out in my mind are Toronto, Kingston, and Ottawa.
Yeah, definitely Belleville area also.
And Kitchener as well. Kitchener's really bad.
Really?
Yeah. It's nice if you have that. It adds a little bit, but then you've got to maintain it. If your budget is such that you want the steam, then you're not going to put the softener in. But if you can do both, you should.
But having a steam unit, because I know that there's a lot of health benefits attached to steam units. And I personally haven't tried one yet. I would love to try one day to install it. But it's also, that brings up a good point about maintenance. I mean, these things are pretty tough, but they still need maintenance.
There is a timer on it so that every so many 100 hours that it will flush itself. So
Automatically?
Automatically.
Oh, wow.
So is there a purging tank then?
What it does is it opens up a valve and it shoots tons of water inside. It doesn't have to go through the float. It just goes right in and it just loosens everything up. The element stays on, but it's cold water, so hopefully the calcium cracks and falls off the element, and then it all gets forced right out into the shower.
Wow.
I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah.
I guess it shrinks it with the cold and then
Yeah.
it becomes brittle and rigid and shatters off.
So let's talk a little more about the showers and what are people asking for these days? I don't want to get crazy luxurious here just yet. I don't think I've met a single client that's asked for one shower head. I've always tried to sell clients at least a minimum of 2. One be your primary, second one be a hand shower that you can use as a secondary head shower, but use it for cleaning the shower itself.
Yeah.
And that's the reason. So you'd always have a minimum of 2. Is that what they're asking? Is that what the market's asking for these days?
What I get to work on is a lot more than that. I'm even on a place on Queen Street right now. It's a brand new system, brand new build, and they're all condos, and they've got these DTVs, and they've got 4 lines hooked up to them. So they've got a toe tester, 2 body sprays, and
And a rain head.
yeah.
So can I ask you, what's the purpose of a toe tester these days? Is it just to wash your feet? 'Cause at one time it was to test the water so that you could feel the temperature before you turn the shower on.
That's still the purpose.
It still is.
Yes. You still want to fill the tub if you want to have a bath.
Right.
So you can use it for that. And the beauty of having it on a DTV system is you get to pick the temperature you desire. You don't have to be there.
Let's describe the DTV because I'm sure a lot of people don't. I've used it a lot. I think you've seen it, but you've never installed one, Carlito.
No, I've never actually installed one.
How would you describe it, Rick? It's basically a manifold.
Yes. We have a 6-port manifold. We have a 3-port manifold that gets paired up
The
with
DTV
a
prompt.
and a 2-port. And it's important to use for what you want. We had a 3-port hooked up to 2 fittings. And it wasn't the right 2 fittings. So the plumber had to take it all apart and hook it up to 1 and 2, and he had hooked to 2 and 3. It wouldn't work. With the 6-port, you can pair up 2 6-ports, or a 6 and a 3, or a 6 and a 2.
You can move. I think when I was at Vegas recently, IBS, they told me you can run 21 gallons per minute off the DTV manifold.
Off the
What?
6, that's just
Off
off
the
the
six.
6-port.
And you're worried about toilets having no longer 4 gallons?
I know, it doesn't make any sense.
No, it makes
What are you
makes a lot of
blasting? Are you
sense.
sandblasting your body?
It makes a lot of sense because I mean 21. I guess at that point a rain head is 2.5 gallons. I guess
Depends.
we're not in California.
Yeah.
Well, I know the restrictions in California.
I think a rain head is just a cosmetic fix for people just kind of wetting themselves down.
I love my rain head. I don't know what you're talking about, man. That's the primary head that I use. It's very soothing to me.
Do you have the real rain or
No, the air infused one, the Kohler one, right? So
Okay.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah, they're great.
So what's the
they're
difference
soft.
between the two then?
Okay,
One
yeah.
is consistent and one is dripping.
One that it can carburize the water. It pulls air in and kind of gives it more of a intense pulse. And the other one's just a steady flow.
That's the air infused one, right?
Air
So it's
infused.
kind of what it is. It's very soft. Like when you turn it on, and
It's supposed to feel like rain, right?
I know, that's what I mean. It's literally, it is like rain. I'm telling you. We've all been stuck in the rain. I ride motorcycles. I've been stuck in the rain, all right? Yeah, even with the helmet on, you can still, it feels that way, right? So, and that's what I like about it.
Oh man, you surprise me all the time. Now, one of my biggest problems with rain heads has always been not enough flow. I've always had to get my plumber to come back in and run a 1-inch line direct to basically to the shower head. The rest of the lines would stay 1/2 inch or 3/4, and the shower head, the rain shower head, would always have to be 1 inch to have the flow that you need.
They do go hand in hand. And if you're low on pressure and you want to increase your flow, you increase the pipe size.
Right.
That's the only way.
That's the
or
simplest
increase
way.
the pressure. You can get a booster pump on your water supply into your house, but that's tricky because you have to put an inlet pressure reducer so that you don't exceed what your working pressure should be.
Would that be in an older home? That wouldn't be in any newer homes.
And older homes with copper don't normally have a problem. But you could get into a situation where your subdivision's at the top of the hill and the water pressure's lower there than it is at the bottom of the hill.
So you're saying if I live in the penthouse, I'm going to have more inconvenience with my shower than being on the ground floor
Possibly, unless you're up in a new pressure zone, like
or on that 7th floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
it depends on how tall the building is. What the biggest problem for us is in a building where it has pressure zones is that they don't always get the hot and cold balanced so that they're within 2 or 3 pounds. And that gives you the best shower with this shower valve or any other shower valve we make is not to exceed 120. The valve is designed around 120 degrees, which is the Ontario building code. Sometimes when you get these into a high rise, they don't always adhere to that 120 degrees. Sometimes you get 140, 150.
Holy
And-
cow, that's hot.
Yeah, and sometimes that reduces our band on hot to just a little. So if you turn it a little, it makes a big difference. Where if it's 120, you can make a nice gradual turn to the hot or the cold.
And let's face it, most homeowners don't have a gentle touch. They're always cranking everything open or closed or...
In a home, it doesn't really matter so much for this because of this diaphragm inside this valve will keep the hot from scalding you if your spouse flushes the toilet while you're in the shower. But that would be on a balanced system.
And why does that happen? Because all the water...
You're reducing the flow of water to the cold side of the shower. And so the hot side's still pressurized, full.
That's how the person in the shower gets all the hot water, and the person
That's
on the
happened to me
toilet,
a lot.
well, they let all the cold water out, and that's where the
A
balance
valve
is.
like this stops that.
That pressure balance valve stops that too, because I know that thermostatic valves do that, DTVs do that, but that one does it as well.
Thermostatic valves are quite interesting in a situation where you're the only user or your family's the only user. So you set it and forget it, right? And you also have to have recirculated water supply so that hot coming to the inside of that valve is as hot as it's going to get once you've run the shower for a few minutes. That's an issue.
Can you explain a recirc line?
The recirc line would be bringing the highest connection or the farthest connection of hot water directly all the way back to the water heater, and then it goes into a pump that pumps it back into the cold side of the water heater and brings hot water back out through the hot pipe. And
It's like a boiler.
A loop.
It's just a loop, yeah. It's not a boiler, but I recommend those for any kind of long distance.
The rooms, I guess the masters, because they generally are parked the furthest away from the mechanical room, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
They don't want to keep the noise away, and generally speaking, they run that water line, whatever size it is, 3/4, 1 inch, to the mechanical room. They don't bring it up in the front and then pipe it. Hopefully, they don't.
They don't. No, you want a direct line.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be doing. And we've done that before, where you do these direct lines to each of the wet rooms. So you choose your bathrooms or laundry room or kitchen or whatever. You get a direct line. You don't tee off anymore, right? That's back in the days of the...
If you're using PEX, yes. Worsbro, you can use T fittings because it's larger inside. It's still an insert fitting, but it's way better. I like it. That's the only plastic pipe I like.
So if the listeners right now want to find out what model that is, what would they be looking for?
An 8304.
That's an A304, right? It's called, I guess the marketing name is Right Temp.
Right temp.
Yeah, Right Temp with RITE.
And the way they've designed this with the tapered and the tapered, you can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong with this valve. It's amazing. Wish I would have invented it.
What's the most luxurious shower you've ever seen, Rick? You ever worked on?
I've worked on one with 11 heads.
11 heads.
Yeah.
A 2-person shower?
2-person shower. We have the real rain head, which is really awesome. That can give you a deluge of water in the center, like a regular rain head would be, about 8 inches. Or it's a 2x2 panel, which it actually drips like rain.
Yeah,
That's
I've seen
cool.
that. It was at
Yeah.
the show. They introduced a black one of that, right? Because they first launched as a white one. I don't even remember the name of that one, but
It's called Real Rain.
Real Rain.
Real Rain.
And it's nice. It looks nice. I haven't tried it, but it looks nice.
It was amazing you didn't go in there and turn it on.
No, man, they wouldn't let me. Okay, so they had the rain heads. I guess they had hand showers, and then they had water tiles, or they had body sprays.
Body sprays and two hand showers. The big deal is that there was 2 zones. The wife and husband loved to shower together most of the time, but they wanted different temperature. And so what we did was we put in 2 controllers and 2 valves. Out of those 2, with the DTV, the husband had music, lights, steam.
I love this already.
and all the shower heads, and then the wife only just had her shower heads at her temperature.
She didn't want music?
Well, she could get it, but
Oh, okay.
but she had to go to his interface to liven up the music.
To get the music.
But we designed it in such a way that she could turn on the rain heads and all of his tiles at a different temperature.
And were they coming off the same DTV manifold or 2 different manifolds?
2 different
Two different manifolds, right? But one no, 2 different interfaces.
We ended up with 4 interfaces altogether.
4.
2 inside the shower, 2 outside. So you could go to your outside shower, hit the pre-purge, and then by the time you get in, the hot water's already there.
And then you can control it again.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I love it.
Oh my
I love where showers are going. I love where the future is going. I think more and more people are not necessarily spending more time in the shower. They just want to make the time that they do spend in the shower as best as possible. Let's talk about water, because I know that we've always had clients ask us over and over, will my tank be enough for all this stuff if I'm building a luxurious shower, or should I go tankless? Or what are your thoughts on that versus tank and tankless?
I'm going to give you a scenario on the tankless first.
Perfect.
Okay?
I love this. This is what me and Manny really enjoy.
I was on a call out for no hot water out of the faucet, but the hot water was at the bathtub. And the aerator was so plugged on the faucet, it couldn't run enough gallons per minute to start the boiler. So it could only give you cold water. I had to take and replace the aerator, and everything started working right. So you have a minimum flow rate through your boiler, and if you don't meet it or exceed it, the boiler won't start.
One thing I always tell my customers when they ask for a tankless is I always tell them to put an extra backup water tank in. It doesn't have to be a full size, just a small backup so that you could do showers or wash your hands. Or
I've seen that in a couple of houses where they had both systems. My recommendation is at least a 100-gallon stainless steel tank for reservoir and a decent-sized boiler to heat that tank so that you can maintain whatever you want out of that tank. What I'm trying to say is a 100-gallon storage tank and a boiler with the capacity to keep it hot.
Just get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
And then you can look at also using that tank with an excess coil inside to use in-floor heat. And then you don't have to have a boiler starting up every time that you do that, and count on the flow. You have a certain flow rate that you can work with on a direct fired wall hung boiler. I personally don't care for it.
I've seen, like, I think in some of the literature with Kohler's, when I do read the instructions, they actually do stipulate not tankless and prefer tank, especially if you're going to larger bathtubs.
Yeah. Here's the reason why. You only can get so much water through that boiler. It's a 3/8 or a 1/2-inch tube inside with a burner under it. Only so much water can pass through that. So if you set your shower at 104 degrees Celsius, you're having a good time, and wife goes to wash her hands, she's using half of the water that you're using, and so your temperature is going to drop.
I've always liked boilers myself. A water tank, sorry.
Water tanks and boilers.
Yeah, because there's not any energy efficient water heater out there. So why pay big bucks to heat 100 gallons in a standard 100-gallon water heater, or go to a 90% efficient boiler that can heat that water for a fraction of the price and faster?
And faster.
Well,
because it's consistent.
You're bringing air in from outside for combustion, and then you're venting it back outside, so you're not losing any room temperature. But with a natural draft water heater, some of your heated air is going up that chimney with that water heater, so you're wasting money.
Carlito and I know that we've talked quite a bit on the podcast and even before then about being a smarter contractor and getting into the whole passive income segment of the market and looking at rental units and things like that. And so I know that, Kohler's got a range of luxurious products, but they've got a range of lower end products, but they're not necessarily lower end products, right? And I know that I would always have a problem if I had a rental property. I'm not going to buy some really cheap valve, right? Like these right temp valves, they're not incredibly expensive, but then they also have other valves that work as well. And these are all things that we can consider for rental properties.
Yes, this good quality brass is going to be around for hundreds of years.
What makes good quality brass?
Keeping the imperfections out
of it.
Less. No lead is good. It's a combination of brass and copper.
You mean a lead solder?
Lead being part of the casting. They used to add lead to brass and copper to make that, and probably so it was easier to make. But today with the new technologies and stuff they've got, this is sweet. I mean, how do you beat that? We've got kitchen faucets that are not really expensive, but they're good quality. And they use the same cartridge as the more expensive faucets would, so the same technology. I would say that when you're putting in some Kohler stuff, you're going to keep it. It's going to be around for a long time.
And something really important to kind of add to Manny and rentals. Many of my friends have rentals. If you have a rental, you don't want to go to your rental every week or every couple days to fix something. The two biggest things in a house that are the big calls from the customer or the renter are the fixtures and the toilet. Toilet's always clogged. The faucet fixtures or the shower fixtures aren't working. So don't spend $50 or $100 on something really cheap, because it's going to cost you time and money to keep going back and repairing and fixing. When you buy something from Kohler, if there's something wrong, you just call, and a lot of times they'll just send you the part out because you're part of the family, you're a customer.
Yeah. No. There's loyalty is big for Kohler family.
It's the customer service. Like you could actually, they'll start talk to you, and you'll get right from the model number, and then they'll start going into the specs, and then they'll get into the diagrams, and then they'll actually, I've seen this for the first time where they actually broke it down, the engineering drawings. Mm-hmm. So each component, and they'll ask you, okay, so what number component are we talking about here? And I'm like, I'm amazed that you can actually go through the whole chain.
And when you call in, they start a file.
Yeah.
And if it's even a $80 faucet, you got a file going on it. If there's a problem,
I love it.
It's a file on the product, not a file on you, Carlito.
Yeah, you're right. It's a file on the product.
Well, I'm not cheap, so I always spend the money where I need to.
But they're always looking for what went wrong. What can we do
to better their product?
What are we going to do to stop that?
That's right.
So that we don't have a lot of cartridges going out and a lot of this going out.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, have you? I know that I've seen some posts recently on social media where Kohler and other brands were showing some vintage stuff, and I still find it funny that 70s, 80s is vintage now.
I don't know if you recall, but I was interested when I was just getting started as a kid. Kohler had this thing called the Habitat. I thought to myself, how extreme, because you could sit in this thing. It was a horizontal thing. It was about this high, and it had a glass wall that you would pull down once you got inside, and then you could have a spring rain with the tropical breeze and music and
What?
lights. Yeah, it was called the Habitat.
And this is from what, the 70s?
70s.
Do they still make it?
No, I don't think so. But I looked for one in the museum. I didn't see one, but that was, I always thought as a kid, like, wow.
You know, you just said something really important. Most companies, you know, they work on the adults. What we don't really realize that in our marketing, we're really getting the adults as children. So one of those things that you remembered as a child made a connection for you with Kohler at such an early age for you never to forget. And now look at where you are.
How lucky can you get? The fact that they were that far ahead and they were thinking that far ahead back in the 70s just blew me away. It lit me up.
You talk about this habitat, I could totally see Kohler going down the way, because we are building these showers now that are becoming these rooms, so to speak, with so much, you know, music, you know, lighting, all the
Steam.
heads,
Yeah.
heat on the
Curbless.
floor, tiles, all kinds of stuff. I could see them building a habitat of today where you go in and it literally is a car wash where you have all kinds of different settings and different wall mounts. And
It was like a lounge, chaise lounge. You always sit in it. You didn't stand in it. And then you pulled this big door down.
Since we're in the washroom still, my favorite, toilets. Can you put us through a couple different types of toilets and different systems of toilets?
We have one-piece toilets, lots of two-piece toilets. We have them with a skirted front, so you don't have to see all the drainage. We have toilets that have the pressure tanks inside. We also have the more modern, intelligent toilets, which are really catching on.
the new me.
Yeah, Manny's favorite.
The new,
I don't
$15,000 later.
no, it's not that expensive, but I don't have one, but the new me's pretty impressive.
I think they're listing at 13 now.
$13,000 for a toilet.
You know what, though? I've had customers, we've talked about this before in plumbing. You walk in a room, the toilet seat is set for you to either lift or lower. I mean, it's just brilliant. Lights come on, the fan comes on with it.
Yeah.
The water gets heated.
The bidet seat gets heated, bidet water gets heated, the air to dry after is heated. With the Numi, you can even heat your feet.
What?
Yeah, there's a high intensity heater right in the very front, but if your feet are cold and you want that, it's hot air blowing right on your feet.
You're kidding me.
And you can
So-
listen to music.
So is that electrically? Like, is that like
Yes, it's an electric heater and it only heats right directly in front.
my God, I
nice.
love it.
Yeah, it's right at the floor.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things to know about toilets, elongated toilets, the height of toilets. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, but some people need a larger, higher toilet because some people touch water, some people don't. I mean, what are the things to know about toilets so people can understand when and when not to use things?
A higher profile toilet is good for older folks.
Comfort height.
Comfort height.
Which
Because-
is 16 inches?
16 or 18.
18, okay, yeah, something like
but the whole deal is the way your body's built. You don't want to lift up past 90 degrees. So if you're up a little higher, it's less effort to straighten your back up and stand up off the toilet.
A toilet's not just a toilet. A toilet's really important. There's so many features to a toilet. Another thing about toilets I don't think people understand is there's different diameters of P-traps or water flow in them. So a lot of people buy a cheaper toilet and that diaphragm, that hole for the drain is smaller than other size P-traps.
A lot of times that happens because the engineering department was unable to get the flush with a larger diameter. And by reducing that diameter, they could get a complete flush.
Really?
That's one of the problems that could come with a low-end toilet. Our engineering is amazing. I learned a lot just by working on the toilets, but when we talk 1.6 liters per flush, that's a combination of water that leaves the tank and the bowl. They work together. It's not 1.6 liters that leaves the tank and goes into the bowl and displaces that water. The jet action starts first with the water that's coming out of the tank. And if your water level isn't high enough in the bowl, you won't get a complete flush. And they used to use flow restrictors because of their California rules on how much
California's
water.
very strict, yeah.
So if those flow restrictors would not allow that bowl to come up to flood level during the refilling of the tank, the next flush wouldn't work. You'd only get the third flush to work. What we did is open that up a bit, let the bowl fill up, and then you're wasting no water because you're not going to flush twice.
Now, does Kohler have an actual, not gravity, but an assist toilet?
That's a pressurized tank. That just basically, it's a jet that shoots a stream out at around 60 psi, takes everything with it, just draws it along with it.
What are your fixes with Kohler if, say, someone constantly has a toilet that's clogging?
Then I would go out and make sure that how I do it to find out is I take a marker and I mark the water level before I start on the bowl. And then I hold the fill valve down and let the water come up in the bowl until it won't come any higher. And then you shut it off and let that water level drop. And then you take and mark your water level. A lot of times they're off by an inch or two. That means you don't have enough water in the bowl to complete the flush.
If you don't have enough water in the bowl, what's that caused from?
Probably the flow restrictor on the fill valve, like I was just mentioning. We open that up, allow more water into the bowl so that when the water that leaves the tank is ready to act on the water in the bowl, there's enough of it to do it. And basically, if you're not close to the flood rim level of that trap with your first flush, your second flush is going to be miserable.
It totally is.
And what could happen is that you end up depositing solids after the toilet, but not enough water to carry it away. And then you could plug your main line.
Kohler's getting into the world of, I know at the beginning we started talking about how HVAC work with plumbing and plumbing works with HVAC and we all get it together, but I'm noticing Kohler's got a lot of new products that require GFI, require low voltage, and I could see more of that happening as well too. Like, I mean, all the DTV systems, they require dedicated GFI. You've got the Sensate Faucet, right, which is like the motion activated one.
Right.
That requires a low voltage as well too.
And voice activated as well.
Oh, and that's right, voice activated. You could actually tell it, give it to
The
me
new
4
me-
liters or something.
I love
Yeah,
it.
you can. I'm like stunned by that.
The new Numis are voice activated as well.
I wanted to get through, because we're kind of getting to the end here now. I wanted to get through a lot of maintenance. I wanted to just go through a gambit of different products and just go through maintenance that maybe a lot of homeowners and contractors don't realize, like that calcium buildup. So in the kitchen, you got a kitchen faucet. You got to always watch out for what?
If the plumber flushed the lines before he put the faucet on, and then we don't introduce any new dirt because they're not working on your water main, there's not much else you need to do.
It's pretty foolproof.
Pretty foolproof. You might, if you were in the hard water area, you could try submerging the aerator in a cup of vinegar.
I love that trick.
For a short period of time. I would say that's the only thing you need to worry about. And as far as the flow goes, if you don't have the flow, you won't get hot water in a demand hot water situation.
Then we get into, I guess, single lever faucets, and they're pretty indestructible, right?
Everything we're making is pretty indestructible. Our hot and cold cartridges for the widespread are great. Top of the line, I'd say.
When we get into toilets, I guess with the canisters, because Kohler doesn't do any more flap toilets, right? It's all a canister.
What's the canister?
Canister is a 360 degree.
It's just a round piece of plastic pipe that runs up and down over top of a centering pin.
You're familiar with the, like Carlito, you're familiar
inside
with
part.
the flaps, right?
Yeah.
The traditional flap way,
Okay.
right? So they changed from the flaps a long time ago to the canisters,
Yeah.
where it basically you hit the lever and the full canister opens up. So you get full 360 pour, right?
And the benefit is that the gasket is just a little ring, and it's no wider than your finger, and it's costs a fraction of the flapper.
But they can over time, I guess, with use.
They don't tend to do what the old flappers did, where the flapper could grow outside of its zone just by sitting in the water.
Yeah.
It would expand.
Yeah.
You're so right. Rubber
Yeah.
does do that.
And these are, I'm going to say silicone, and they don't do that. They just drop down on a knife sharp seat, and it's a good resilient rubber or silicone.
What other maintenance things that we should be aware of?
Water heaters should have the pressure relief valve changed every 5-10 years.
Every 5-10 years.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe that boilers are 10 years and steam boilers are 5 years. Chances are your water heater's ready to be changed anyways after 10 years, because a lot of times there's about that much garbage on the bottom of that tank.
Wow.
And that's just from the sediment from the water that's gone through there.
Well, there's a sacrificial anode inside every tank, and that's so that your water impurities and everything attack it, because it's magnesium. It's soft, and it stay away from the glass line tank. But the glass line tank expands and contracts and expands and contracts, and soon there's
brilliant.
cracks in the glass, and now the water's attacking the boiler or the tank, and then you get all this on the bottom. So if it's a gas water heater, you hear all of this thumping and gurgling and pounding and stuff. That's water boiling between the garbage and the steel of the tank.
Interesting.
So 10 years you should be looking at new boilers, new hot water tanks?
From an energy efficiency point of view, a new water heater is going to be way more efficient than a 10-year-old water heater with 3 or 4 inches of gunk on the bottom.
Energy efficient. What's up and coming and what's big in kitchen sinks for Kohler?
Kohler has a lot of under-counter stuff, cast iron, top-notch.
How about the faucets for the kitchens? Anything
Voice
interesting or new?
activated, man.
Yeah?
The voice
Those
activated is going to be the thing, and the Sensate where you run your hand under it. So if you're working with chicken and you got whatever all over your hands,
Chicken.
you run your hand under here, the water starts to come. You can wash your hands, you go like that. You don't ever touch the faucet, so it's not breeding bacteria all the time.
At Manny's house, it's fish.
You've never been to my house.
I could just imagine.
That brings up a good point, Carlito. So, like, Rick, where do you see plumbing from now, like in the next 5-10 years? Where do you see it going? Because, I mean, you've seen quite a change from 70s, 80s, 90s, and...
It scares me a little to thinking that I'm getting close to the end of my career, but I'm pretty excited about all electronics, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to be talking to everything.
It's where it's headed. I mean, when I was at the show there, so they had the 2 rooms that were AI. You can walk in and you can experience both rooms either by touch or by voice. And that was operating the mirror, operating the sink, operating the tub, operating the shower. And I was thoroughly impressed by that. I could totally see that being the future. And when you can interact with the toilets now, I also saw that Kohler's got a whole wide range of towels, light fixtures, all these accessories. Like, it was just, yeah, I agree with you. The technology. So I think every plumber has to get very friendly with every electrician, and they have to get friendly with every HVAC person. We all got to work together to make these rooms work.
There was one other thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
As far as the steam generators go, a lot of the electricians, and I don't know how they get it past the electrical inspector, but my electrician told me it's no different than the condenser on your air conditioning unit. You got 40 amp breaker or a 60 or 80 amp breaker, you should have a disconnect right there.
That's right.
So that no one can turn that on while you're working on it. Because 80 amps will blow your hand off.
You are brilliant.
We forgot
my
to
man.
mention that those steam generators actually consume a
Wow.
lot of power.
They do.
Yeah, and it's true.
The element is about that long, and it's a coil with one return. And it's that big around. And it
So
can,
if people can't see this on the, it's basically about 12 inches by about 4 inches round.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, or three and a half.
And that
inches.
heats really quickly.
Very quickly, and it can vaporize a gallon in seconds. Wow. And they also maintain 175 inside the steam generator all the time, so that when you hit steam, it's only a matter of 5-10 seconds, and you're already making steam.
So I guess they haven't passed this yet, but I'm sure the ESA will pass it soon, where they have to have a disconnect right then and there.
I'm surprised at how many I've seen. I've only come across 2 that were done intentionally, and every one I work on, I get my electrician to come in and do it.
Big question for me right now. I want to take a look at some of the toilets because you got me interested now. Like, I'm really interested in the product. I want to check out some of the new stuff, especially the toilet, and if you correct me on the name, that blows the heat out onto your feet.
Numi.
The Numi. That is something absolutely amazing. What is your webpage?
You can just go on your status bar, whatever it's called on the computer, just type in Numi, And it'll come right up.
Yeah.
Okay, and that will show the rest of the products.
Well, no, you
guys
go to
carry.
Kohler.com. I
Okay.
mean, Kohler.com, if you're in Canada, it actually gets redirected to Kohler.ca.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kohler.com, and then the social media handles are all Kohler. It's all Kohler. There's lots of information online. And then also the customer service. Like every warranty or every instruction manual that comes with every single product has that customer service number on it, and you can contact, and you get a real person.
Yeah, you call it 1-800-4-Kohler.
Do you know that they're real people?
They sound like they're real people.
I'm pretty sure. I've seen pictures.
I think we've covered a lot here. I mean, we kind of just went through a whole gambit of stuff, but thank you very much, Rick,
my
to
pleasure.
to join us and give us a lot of enlightenment into the plumbing world here. And we hopefully people are listening regarding a lot of these this insight.
I'm going for the newbie right after this podcast.
All right, and so thank you, Rick. Thank you so
thank
much,
you.
and we really appreciate it. And I think Carlito, you got to what?
I got one thing. I just want to say thank you to Skylux and Mark for
For
always
sure.
having us at home base.
Silex Studios.
Yeah,
That's what
and,
it is.
Kohler, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Great company,
it.
great products. Never had an issue with them, and I'll continue enjoying installing them. Right, so
And if you have an issue, call.
call. It's beautiful. You gonna get us out of here? He does this little thing, Rick. That's all it is. Thank you, Rick, so much. Really appreciate it. Wonderful talk about Kohler and all the products, and some great insight onto plumbing products, plumbing, the industry. Thank you, Rick. Carlito, we out of here.
The 416, baby, T.O. Ow!